Hello.
Hi.
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 Welcome back to our third episode of our Potions for Breakfast podcast. My name's Alyssa,
I'm Izzy.
and today we are going to be doing creepy, horror, haunted, true life stories off of Reddit. And so we apologize. We didn't get a video out last weekend. Somebody was sick, and then
It was just a busy week.
it was a bad week.
Yeah.
So this is technically last weekend's video. We will still have one coming this coming weekend, so keep an eye out for that. I believe that one's going to be a serial killer one, right?
Yes.
Yes. Looking forward to that one. Anyway, so you want to start it off with a story?
Yeah. Actually, this one's pretty long.
Jesus.
It's two separate posts, but they're all about the same kind of thing. So
That's all one?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, so hopefully it's good. I haven't read it in full yet. So this is posted by Ophelia Phoenix XX. This first part was posted about a month ago. So, my child is a psychic medium plus telepath who can see and mind read the dead and the living. I've had some requests in here for the long story. Sorry for the wait. Take my recounting of the events with a grain of salt. Also, while I describe things colorfully, I'm just setting the scene and relaying the facts. I share the little details because I've never written this down before and I'm going to start forgetting them. None of this is fabricated for entertainment value or internet clout. I'm not the type. If I sound like I'm leaning towards believing, it's because it's hard to experience this much and deny it, which I completely get. I dare you to listen to the nightly play-by-plays of what the ghosts in the room are doing while you try to fall asleep. Just make of it what you will. It all started in June of 2020. My daughter, 2 years old, and my husband, 36, and I, 35, moved from an apartment in Newark, New Jersey, to a house in the middle of the woods in the New Jersey Pine Barrens.
Ooh.
Which also, I was thinking, another really good episode to do would be the New Jersey Devil.
Okay.
That one's really interesting.
All right.
Anyone unfamiliar with the Pine Barrens, they are a really creepy-looking forest in South Jersey near the shore. The rivers run as red as blood, sandy soil, no brush, just lone, desolate, tiny pine trees.
Okay,
that's
we're
like a
setting
horror
it
movie.
up. We're setting it
Yeah.
up. All right.
All right. Okay, the trees are about 6 feet tall. It's also I feel like if I...
A tree, that's not that tall.
No, she said
Okay.
tiny trees.
See how well I'm paying attention.
It's also the supposed home of the Jersey Devil, the namesake of the Jersey Devils hockey team.
I bet Kaylee would know something about this.
Probably. I think it's like a really big cryptid in New Jersey. And it's like half deer, half dog, wolf. Like it has like a deer body and like a...
I have an image
don't know.
I have an image in my
Here.
head, and I really want to go grab the...
Why have an image when I can show you an image? Because it is creepy, and maybe we'll insert a picture just for anybody that doesn't know what it looks like. It's funky looking.
Funky?
It's a goat head, not a dog head.
I definitely take back the book I was going to recommend today, and we're going to go with the other one.
You see? Isn't it hideous?
Yeah.
Or like,
That's
That one's
something
a
right
little
there.
funky.
Kind of like...
yeah. It's a funky looking
Ew.
thing.
Show them, if they can see it.
I guess that's a fine picture. There are definitely creepier pictures on the internet that kind of depict it better than this one, but yeah, it's crazy. Go back. Okay. According to popular folklore, the Jersey Devil originated with a Pines Barren resident named Jane Leeds, known as Mother Leeds. The legend states that Mother Leeds had 12 children, and after discovering she was pregnant for the 13th time, cursed the child in frustration.
Gotcha, goblin.
But I don't blame her, declaring that the child would be the devil, quote in quotes. What?
No, but I just... Yeah.
Okay. In 1735, in a cottage deep in the woods, Mother Leeds was in labor on a stormy night while her friends gathered around her. Unfortunately for her, the 13th child was born normally. Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Jeez, alright.
However, it transformed into a creature with hooves, a goat's head, bat wings, and a forked tail. Growling and screaming, the child beat everyone with its tail before flying up the chimney and heading into the Pine Barrens. In some versions of the tale, Mother Leeds was supposedly a witch, and the child's father was the devil himself. Some versions of the legends also state that local clergymen subsequently attempted to exorcise the creature from the Pine Barrens, kind of like a chupacabra. There have been mass sightings on records, and this will be relevant later. We moved to the countryside to get out of the city, locked down from the pandemic. Newark is only 10 miles from NYC. COVID restrictions were limiting our daily lives. I used to take my daughter to the playground every day, but they closed the playgrounds. The healthcare system there is buckling down at the seams on a good day. Curfew on all non-essential traveling. So there's a curfew on non-essential traveling. I wanted to get away from all of that, and we could move anywhere we wanted because I was online teaching. My husband had a chimney maintenance business, so we made the move. My daughter and I were together all day, which was pretty easy because she has a great disposition. It started with the house. It was a 2-story with a basement. After we moved in, my husband and I started hearing stomping, doors slamming, doors locking, like an angry couple having a fight. He and I would text each other, "You mad?" because we thought it was each other at first. When we did fight, doors would lock in between us. I thought he was locking me in/out and vice versa.
Oh my God.
Until it kept happening, and we both knew that we weren't doing it. It escalated those first couple of arguments, though. And don't read too much into this, because the reason we were apart with the door between us wasn't because we stormed off or got kicked out. It was just to calm down before we talked it out. There was also the light bulbs. The light bulbs all had a mind of their own, blinking, strobing, flickering, and changing colors. One night, I was at home alone in bed with my cat and dog asleep on my lap. All of a sudden, they woke up, and they were both staring at something tall next to the bed. Their eyes started tracking it from the bedside to the foot of the bed, at which point my dog lunges forward to the entity, jumped off the bed, and started barking underneath the bed. I was pretty freaked out, called my husband, but he's such a skeptic, he didn't believe it. It could be anything supernatural.
It's always the men that's skeptic, too.
Always the men. Actually, Ben was staying the night a couple weeks ago, and he said it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. I was like conked out, and all of a sudden I could just hear him say like, "Babe," and like nudge me a little bit, and I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Nothing. I just wanted to make sure that you were still in bed." And I just went back to sleep. I was like, okay. And when I woke up a couple hours later, I was like, "Why did you ask me if I was still in bed?" And he said, "Because I saw something walk from like the door to his side of the bed, and Kona was following it."
Oh, hell no.
And it just like stood there. Yeah. I might have to...
It must have been kind of friendly-ish then.
Well,
because...
We'll get into that when I talk about some of my ghost stories. Because I actually think that he's experienced more in my house than I have. So I don't know if the ghost has some kind of attachment to him. At midnight that night, my daughter's 3rd birthday eve, I heard her screaming and crying, frantically trying to open her bedroom, but the door wouldn't open. I thought she locked herself in, but when I went to open it, the handle immediately opened. She leapt into my arms, her face was red, tears streaming down her face, pointed at the bed and said, "It hurt me." "What hurt you?" "That." She points a couple of feet from the bed this time. Her face was shook. She was steadily still pointing and staring at it. I said, "What's that? Is it a person?" "Yes." We both froze in fear. Then my cat came walking down the hall towards us. Big black Bombay, with the personality of a reincarnated human. He's the weirdest cat I've ever had. He needs his own whole post.
Oh my God.
Anybody who knows him knows he's really friendly, like aggressively friendly. And he's so comforting when we're upset. But instead of Stopping at Mommy and sister, petrified in fear of the doorway, he pushes past us and was gravitating towards exactly where where my daughter was still pointing. At which point, she leapt out of my arms, grabbed her cat, turned to look at the entity, shook her finger, and said, "No, ghost, no," and ran out of the room. Again, I was home alone. My husband was on a boys' trip to the Poconos. I called him all freaked out and Mr. Skeptical and said, "She's just watching too much Scooby-Doo."
Okay. Okay.
I said if she's being theatrical, we need to get her to Hollywood because she's a hell of an actress. Also, how do you explain the cat in some sort of ghost trance? The funny thing is, she's not an actress at all. What you see is what you get, doesn't ever lie, is bad at it when she tries. I love her, she's so gifted, but bless her heart, she's not the most imaginative or creative kid. Ask her to name a new Barbie, and it's Barbie. New teddy bear to Teddy.
My God.
She's on the spectrum, and at the time was still largely nonverbal. After that point, thankfully the noises and occurrences in the house died down. For the next 2 years, things were relatively uneventful. The light bulb still did weird stuff, but no other signs. I never turned the basement lights off. It just gave me the creeps. I might have been right too, but we'll get there. We thought we were in the clear, but then there's weird shit in the woods behind our house. At 10 p.m. every night, my dog would be gunning to go outside. When I let him out, he would run up to the tree line and just lose his mind, barking his head off. I wasn't sure if it was a peeping Tom. In my lifetime, I've only seen 3. My Ukrainian mom said it might be some kind of Ukrainian house spirit I successfully cast out of the house, but now it's still talking to us. It likes to hang out around the perimeter of the house. The Jersey Devil? Who really knows? Maybe just some deer. That's what I wanted to believe. Then my husband was outside burning boxes in the fire pit when he saw a dark figure about 5 or 6 feet tall with 2 glowing red eyes staring at him from 3 meters away. He couldn't deny that was weird. We got a taser after that.
Weird.
He had me tested on him in the snow, and it works. We might have accidentally traumatized the neighbor's kids. She just tase him in the middle of winter.
Oh my God.
Okay, so now we're getting to the most recent post, which was made just about a week after this one. That last one, it looks like. Picking up right where I left off, if you haven't seen part 1, I'll link it in the comments. I'm aware this suspends belief. Family and friends have mixed reactions for years. They either think that my daughter and I are mental, or they think she's gifted. You can make of this what you will. I'm just relaying the events as they happen. If I sound like I'm leaning towards it being real, it's hard to experience this stuff and not wonder. I do want to get her seeing and talking to ghosts and angels, but for both chronological and for context and what's to come, I'm going to get to the mind reading stuff. Oh, she wants to talk about that later. I was like, you want to get her into seeing and talking to ghosts?
Yeah, okay.
I was like, okay.
Maybe a therapist, but...
Yeah, that would be my first option. Okay, so when she was 3 years old, my daughter started responding to things I was thinking in my head out loud. First time it happened, we were on a flight from New Orleans to Newark, returning from visiting during spring break. I was thinking to myself, I want to move down south again, but I don't want to disrupt her stability. I was thinking maybe she'd be happier if we just stayed put. So she said that in her head. And out loud, her daughter said, I don't want to stay there. I want to move down here. Now, this is just one of the more plausible things a child would randomly say, so I didn't assume she was reading my mind per se, but it definitely made me raise an eyebrow. The next time it happened, I was driving home late at night, and I always had to drive extra slow through the woods after dark. There were many deer out there, and I used to count them each time. We were talking a good dozen each time. I used to call it Deer Safari. You drive slow while appreciating the wildlife and hoping it doesn't come towards you and kill you. By car crash, obviously deer are pretty docile. My daughter was in the back seat. I was thinking to myself, I wish more people in New Jersey would go hunting so there was less of them all over the road. I'm a vegetarian praying for people to kill deer. How ironic. So that's what she said in her head. And her daughter responded with, Mommy, I want to kill a deer. Okay. Now
Mind reader!
Now that's a weird thing for her to say. My husband and I never talk about deer hunting, and she had very little outside influence, never mind it being a strange desire of a toddler, even if they were familiar with the concept. She started translating for the pets. She tells me she knows what they're saying when they meow, bark, signal, whatever, and it's cute. Like, okay, sure. She always gets it right, though. It cuts down on me playing the guessing game. Obviously, this isn't concrete or anything. I'm just including everything that's happened. One day, she's staring out the front door with my dog staring at a squirrel. And she starts talking really fast. I gotta get that squirrel. I need to get that squirrel. I gotta get that squirrel. As if she was channeling his thoughts. She has never spoken like this before or since. Then, speaking of my dogs getting squirrels, his dream came true. He dragged a baby squirrel into the house and I rescued it from his mouth. I couldn't get the baby to the nature rescue folks until the morning, so I went to the supermarket and got some kitten milk, but I couldn't find a bottle for it. I fed the baby squirrel using a straw and then the corner of a Ziploc bag. Oh my God. I literally got this poor thing latched onto a plastic bag. I fostered kittens before, so I knew he couldn't retain his own body heat. I had him on my chest for as long as possible, trying to keep him warm, and I fell asleep. Aww. Oh no! When I woke up, he was dead underneath me. R.I.P. little buddy.
Well, way to go.
Oh no. I feel like maybe you could have picked up a heat lamp at the very least.
Put it in, like, something.
Yeah.
And put something, I don't know. You could have done something.
I was so scared to, like, sleep with Seneca when she was a puppy, because I didn't want to roll on top of her and crush her.
That's what I felt about those two little shits.
I'm scared of how my daughter would take it, so I wanted to bury him before she woke up. I went into the woods behind my house to return his body to nature. When she woke up, I told her he went to go live with his mommy, but she didn't believe me, and nothing I said was making it better. She was standing at the back door with tears rolling down her face. I was like, okay, avoiding upsetting her isn't working. Let me just tell her the truth. I told her she died. I asked if she wanted to go see his grave. She said yes.
How old is this child?
I'm not sure if it says exact. Oh wait, it does. 2.
And she's
I'm not
talking
gonna lie,
like all of this.
Couple of questionable parenting choices, but yeah. I'm not gonna judge. I'm not a parent, so I don't know. Maybe she's just trying to desensitize her to death, which is understandable. But we went to the woods. Okay. There are a couple of questionable parenting choices here. We went to the woods.
That needs to be a reel.
Uncovered his body. She said, yep, he's dead. And she covered his grave back up and seemed to have gotten some peace and closure. We were walking back to the house, her in front and me behind her, and I was feeling so guilty about how he died. I started picturing it. When she gasped, she turned around to look at me and said, "You killed him in your sleep?" Like she was legit surprised and appalled out of nowhere. This is one of those incidents that really sticks with me. Another really curious incident. We're Jewish, and it was Yom Kippur, the New Year's. It was a time for atonement and doing like a review of oneself over the past year, reflecting on how we can be a better person. I can think of a couple of ways. I was driving with my daughter in the backseat, meditating on my moral inventory, and I was being really, really tough on myself. People are always telling me I'm too hard on myself, and I was like, okay, God, how much should I take into account and how much should I give myself a break? When my daughter says, God wants you to listen to the universe from the backseat. After these incidents, I started talking to friends and family about it. My daughter's 4 at this point. One of my friends asked my daughter to do it on command, and my daughter said, "You're thinking of nothing." My sister laughed. She had blanked her mind out on purpose to try and trick her. My daughter's best friend asked her to do it too, and again, she got it. Her best friend was like, "Oh my God, how did you know that?" My daughter said, "Because I'm a brain thinker." We asked her to do what cats are thinking. Dogs, people, yes, except for Auntie Jenny. I don't ever know what Auntie Jenny is thinking. I thought she was really cute when she came up with it in her own words, because she didn't know the word telepathic. And I guess Auntie Jenny just doesn't have anything going on in her head.
Damn.
It's a little empty up there. Now I'm hyper aware in what I think about when I'm around her. I'm a little unnerved by the possibility that I don't have private thoughts around her. I catch her staring at me, and I try to scramble my brain. I know it sounds crazy, truly, but I challenge anyone to have it happen to them and not be a little creeped out. But if she's telling the truth, the minds of the living aren't the only things she can read. And I guess there's going to be another part after that, so I'm a little curious to know if that's uploaded yet. So let's check that out. All right, well, that was an interesting tale.
How do you feel about that?
It's... I don't know. I think maybe some of it could be chalked up to imagination. I know that she said she wasn't very imaginative, but she was also only 2. She was kind of like getting to that age where maybe imagination is a little more. But...
Isn't she a little too young to say half the stuff that she said? I mean, I don't know. Maybe kids these days just learn way sooner than
maybe. I don't know, but I mean, it seemed like a lot of what she said was pretty short, so possibly.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I don't have kids. I don't know. I don't know how they talk.
They're fur babies.
They are fur babies. Seneca doesn't bark very much, though. She's not much of a talker. She's more of like a grumbler. Yeah. All right. Well, what's your story?
I don't know which one we're going to start with, but really don't know what they're about. Skimmed through it very briefly, and some of them I just printed out.
I wanted to be surprised, so yeah. I just found some read these really quick right before we started. So.
Yeah. This sounds like it would be a supernatural experience, so that's, I think, what the story is going to be about. Okay. I've had a few supernatural experiences, but the one I usually go to is when I worked in a supermarket. I grew up in a farm town, and the only place to get groceries, besides the grossly overpriced Shopko... Oh my god, Shopko! Oh, hello. On the edge of town was a family-owned supermarket, Robertson's. The Robertson family was very active in the community, but also had a reputation from miserly to straight-up evil, depending on who you asked. All right.
Red flags.
Let me go shop there. If you ask me and the rest of the bag boys, Robertson's had a dark aura around it. Many features contributed, like the vaulted ceilings in the back rooms, the creaking floors in the upstairs offices, and the door hidden behind a pile of old shelves that seemed to lead under the loading dock. Oh, nice. The worst was the patriarch of the Robertsons, Blaine. He was too old to handle the business decisions, but he was too stubborn to let his toupee-toting son...
He was too... Oh, this is like the father?
This must be like a grandpa or like the older man of the business or something. Okay. Where am I? Sorry. But he was too stubborn to let his toupee-toting son take it out of his hands. So he spent his days shuffling around the floor, antagonizing the bag boys at every turn. He'd chastise us for clocking in more than 1 minute early. He'd chastise us for standing at the clock with a minute left on our shift.
You would hate it there.
Yeah. That's all I'm going to say on that. He'd chastise us for laziness the second we weren't actively moving items. Oh, yeah, him and I would go rounds.
Oh, yeah.
One of us would not walk away from that. Just kidding, all jokes aside. I always joked that Blaine was a vampire. He just refuses to die. Okay.
Oh,
well, is he really pale? Is he aging really well? Because then you'll know. Is he Edward Cullen?
Do you find him drinking suspiciously red beverages?
Right. Why else is there never a call over the intercom for kids who lost their parents? One night, my suspicions were reinforced. Blaine had shown up about 9 to take care of some office work upstairs with all of her closing duties done. My partner for the night and I lollygagged in the stockroom right at the foot of the office stairs. When 10 rolled around and it was time to close, I figured I'd let Blaine know we were locking up. I started up the stairs and suddenly noticed it was dark. I got to the top and looked around. Not a single light in the office was on. We had stood at the bottom of the stairs the whole time and Blaine hadn't passed us. Even when Blaine isn't looming like Nosferatu, is that how you pronounce it? Strange things happen upstairs. The exposed water pipes leading upstairs twang like someone hit them with a hammer. Footsteps on the creaky floor echo through the whole back room. All of this happens when the offices are pitch black as we stand next to the stairs. Maybe he is a vampire.
Maybe.
One night, my partner and I got freaked out by the noises from the offices and decided to spend the remainder of the shift lapping the store. But as we walked perpendicular to the aisles, a can of green beans halfway down the vegetable aisle suddenly fell off the shelf. We put it back in place and started walking again. 2 aisles down, another can fell off. This time, as I put it back in place, a can 15 feet down the aisle flew off the shelf. We left the one sitting and huddled around the cash registers for the rest of the shift. To top it off, though, a bag boy requested to be taken off night shifts after an experience he had in the break room. The break room has 2 small bathrooms, male and female. He was taking his dinner break when he heard a baby crying from the woman's bathroom. He had been in there 5 minutes already and hadn't seen anyone come in, much less a baby. He endured the crying for 5 more minutes before he got concerned and knocked on the door. Repeated knocks and questions got nothing back except for the non-stop bawling. He was finally convinced something had happened to the mother and cracked the door open. The room was dark and empty. Sounds like a fable story.
And the room is where the crying was coming from?
Yeah, the dark room.
I don't like
I don't
that.
know. It's a little weird. I don't know how I feel about it.
But I don't like that. Still.
No. Okay. So, on to the next short story I do have here. I lived in an old apartment in 2002. The place was built in 1900, so it was just over 100 years old when I moved in. Hello. The living room and kitchen were fine, but the bathroom and bedroom were unnerving. Like
bathroom. The bathroom.
Is that what I said?
Yeah.
The bathroom.
The bathroom.
Like I just always felt like I was being watched, especially in the bedroom if the closet door was open.
I felt like that the other day.
Like unnerving.
Yeah, but I just got done watching like a spooky TV show, so I was a little on edge.
Your senses were a little heightened. Yeah, okay. That happens.
But the weird thing is, I only experienced it like the first time I had gone to my bedroom yesterday. I didn't experience it right before I went to bed, even though I had still been watching the show. I don't know.
That's weird.
I don't know.
I don't
Just
know.
saying.
Where was I? Those unnerving feelings just became moderately uncomfortable as I settled in. I felt safe in the bedroom, but only if the door was locked. One night, I was dead asleep when there was a loud bang on my bedroom door. When I got up the courage to get out of bed, I checked the apartment and all the windows were closed and locked from the inside. The door still had the chain secured. No one was in there. I mentioned the closet in the bedroom. I never liked going in there, and I never liked if the door was open. For some reason, in my head, I would hear gasping noises. So for that reason, the closet stayed closed.
She heard gasping noises in her head or coming from the closet?
From in the closet is in my head I would hear gasping noises.
Okay, I think I get it.
I mean, that's where you do hear things, is in your
Fair point.
Anywho, a month or more after I was woken to the bang on my door, I was dead asleep. But something woke me up, and it was a pressure on me like being held down. Oh, hell no. It was pitch black in my room. I couldn't see anything, but I knew someone was standing over me. When I could finally turn on the bedside lamp, no one was there. Go figure.
They never are.
After then, I couldn't sleep in the dark. I had to sleep with the lamp on. That incident scared the life out of me, and after that unnerving feeling of being watched intensified. Friends would come over and comment about being uncomfortable in the bathroom, like being watched. It became so uncomfortable for me when I had the chance to move into another unit, I jumped at it. I packed up and got out. After me, several people rented the apartment and they would move out within months. I became friendly with the building manager and I told him that I felt the place was haunted. He kind of laughed it off.
He knows.
It's probably him.
It might be.
Years after they were renovating the place, building manager was doing some painting in there. The building owner was there too. I went and checked out the apartment and it looked nicer. It didn't feel as creepy. I got to talking with the building owner and through the course of conversation, he just throws it out there that a former tenant committed suicide in the closet by hanging themselves. He also mentioned that the original designer of the building lived in that apartment and died in there. I wasn't mad when I heard that, but it felt validated that what I experienced was real.
Yikes.
And validation assured.
That reminds me, so I used to go down to Alamosa every couple of weeks to visit Ben when we were still doing long distance. So in Alamosa, it's a very small town, but they have one big college there. It's called Adams State. And there's like a tower, I think, if I remember it correctly. We might have to get Ben on here to explain a couple of his stories. But
Ben, you want to be a star, a guest on an episode?
So he was telling me in this tower, one of the janitors at the school committed suicide by hanging himself. And so that, I don't know if it's the whole college or just that specific part, but it's supposedly haunted.
I can see
Alamosa
that. Sounds
I'm not going to lie to
creepy.
you. There's something in the water there from the stories I've heard. There is something in the water.
Maybe it's an old Indian burial ground or some shit. I don't know.
There's like a lot of alien conspiracies down in southern Colorado of like, there was like a horse that disappeared and then when it was found again, this, like, from its neck up was just completely skinned, but everything else was intact.
I feel like I heard something about this.
It's called, like, Snippy the Horse.
That sounds familiar.
We might have to cover that on, like, we might have to do, like, a short story about it at some point, but, so this one, I don't think it's a haunting. It's more of, like, a true crime, maybe, possibly. So this one was posted by odd_lawyer_5929. Just 2 days ago it was posted. I worked as a dispatcher for a pretty small ambulance station near a fairly large city in the middle of the U.S. I don't know how specific I can be since this is a true story. And I'm going to tell one of the craziest stories I have from this job. We had a patient who we'll call Susan. She was a dialysis patient, and one of the services we offered was to take very unwell or disabled patients to and from these dialysis appointments. She lived with her son, who we'll call David. He was in his late 40s and his mother, Susan, in her late 70s or so. Every week, like clockwork, we would have a unit bring Susan to and from her dialysis treatments 3 times a week. Everyone knew her at the station because we had been doing this for quite some time with Susan. We're all familiar with her and her son, whether it was the crew seeing her in person and taking care of her, or speaking to her or her son on the phone frequently about the appointments, as I had done. Everyone knew her. Naturally, when crews had news about her health, they would report back to keep everyone in the loop with how she was. At one point, she was not feeling well at all, but she wanted to go to her dialysis appointment, so naturally we obliged and took her in. I feel like if you're not feeling well, the last thing you want to do is not go to your dialysis appointment.
Yeah.
At this point, while receiving dialysis treatment, she lost consciousness and was promptly taken by our crew to the hospital. When it was time again for her dialysis appointment, we gave the hospital a call to see if she had been released and was able to go to the appointment. The hospital staff informed us that she would likely be released the following day and would be receiving dialysis treatment in the hospital. The next treatment time rolled around, and we called the hospital, and we were told that she had been released from their care the other day. This was great news, but a little strange due to the fact that we were always her first call to transport her to and from any hospital or appointment, and we hadn't transported her anywhere recently. We quickly moved on, however, and called David, her son, to see if she was going to be requiring us for her treatment that day. He informed us that she wasn't feeling well and she wasn't up to it, but that he was considering taking her back to the hospital. We tell him that he needs us just to give us a call, and until further notice, we'll cancel her trip for the day. We never get a call. The next appointment time rolls around, and we call David again to ask if she will be going. He says she's sick and she's back in the hospital. Weird again, since we hadn't taken her, but it doesn't seem that off considering her health had been deteriorating. Next appointment, same thing happens. We call David, his mom's in the hospital, we move on. Now this is where things took a bit of a turn. When the next appointment came up, we had tried calling David to ask about his mother's status, but he never answered or returned our calls. So being that we had a contract with Susan and were to take her to these appointments unless told otherwise, we sent a crew to collect her for treatment. When the crew arrived at the scene, they knocked on the door to no response. They knocked again and were greeted by David smoking a cigarette. David seemed surprised. The crew said that they were here to pick up Susan for her appointment. David responded, stating that he had forgotten to call, but Susan was still in the hospital and not doing well. The crew gave their best wishes, and David shut the door. But the crew felt like something was off. They immediately radioed to dispatch that something was wrong and requested that we call the hospital. The hospital that David said she was in, to see if she was still there. The hospital had no record of her being there since we last knew. So we had the crew leave the scene, and we called for a welfare check on Susan and her son's home. We had heard nothing the rest of the day from the police, David, Susan, or anyone else involved. The next morning, I came into work, and the very first call I took began with, "This is Sheriff so-and-so with so-and-so. I'm calling to report back on the welfare check you asked us to perform yesterday." I was nervous as he sounded concerned, and I didn't really expect them to call us back with any news. He proceeded to let me know that upon arrival to the home, they spoke with David, who was adamant that his mother didn't feel well, but that she was home from the hospital. The police asked just to check on Susan to make sure she was all right, and eventually David obliged, letting the police in. Once entering the home, they were met with a grim scene, though I imagine they smelled it first. They continued to explain that what the officers observed was the dead body of Susan propped up on the couch, wrapped in blankets, as if watching the television, but she had been dead for a while. They approximated about 2 weeks. When speaking to David, they found he had been changing her clothes regularly and watching TV with her. Obviously, he was suffering from some sort of mental issue and grief, but the thing was, he had never taken good care of her until she was dead. No news coverage, no updates from police further than that, nothing. Stuff like this happens in your hometown, and you'll never know.
That's just messed up.
That's creepy.
That's just messed up.
That's creepy. I don't like that.
Sociopath.
Okay.
That's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. I didn't think she was gonna be dead. I thought they were gonna, walk in and she's, looking like my
Dead?
best friend's exorcist or some shit.
Oh, no.
God, that's weird.
Yeah.
Ugh. I don't like that. Alright. I have had several dreams similar to what I am posting. I've been a caver in Florida for about 13 years.
What's a caver?
A caver.
Huh?
Look it up.
Is that someone that lives in a cave?
Hmm.
Oh, no.
Need to make that a blooper. A caver. That, goes, in caves and,
Oh!
explore.
I was like, does he live in a cave? Are there caves in Florida?
The light. Do you see the light that just turned on?
I used to be blonde, if you couldn't tell.
Oh, God. Just keep it brown.
I can't. The bleach has already seeped in.
Oh my god. Anyways, I've been a caver in Florida for about 13 years since I was about 6, and I've been to a lot of caves. Never been afraid before this to go in one. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I started having this reoccurring dream. I would have it at least twice a year, always the same, even though I would realize I was dreaming after the first few interactions. I've actually had that happen. I lived in a house where I had the exact goddamn dream all the time, and I never had it after I moved out of there.
Really?
Yes.
When we get into our personal stories after
Yeah.
this, I've got a couple that I want to share.
Perfect. I would fall asleep and dream of being in a cave and going into this little hole in the bottom. Inside, I would see a 10 to 15 foot long corridor, about 2 to 4 feet high. At the end, it would always turn left, and I always saw a bent red stop sign at the end, like someone ripped off the top 2 feet and tossed it in. But I would always follow the corridor. I would turn and walk past the sign despite being scared, despite many times knowing what was there, and the corridor would start descending quickly, opening into a large vertical chamber with the path leading down in a corkscrew. Everything became blurry at this point, but it was always the same. So I think that the whole thing was just a dream, right?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
I saw trash scattered on the walls. I saw the pit leading down to a curved floor. I saw things, identified, animals or people or something else at the bottom. I saw my family, each with one of the things being tortured and killed.
Ooh, like the family members were torturing?
No, the family members were being tortured by one of the unidentified things.
Ooh.
And I could never do anything to help, I'm assuming.
Oh.
After I saw that, I would be stuck for a few seconds until I felt more than saw everything turn. Like there's a typo here. And look at me.
Oh, hold on, I think I get it.
And I felt more than saw everything turn and look at me.
I think it's supposed to be then, not than.
Then. I felt more than saw. Okay, whatever.
Grammar, who needs it?
Yeah. And I would wake up. Not like a normal dream where you just drift to consciousness, or a nightmare where you bolt up in fear, but like something pushed me out. Like I wasn't supposed to be there. So I have this dream multiple times a year until I turned 15. I did tell a friend about the dream before what happens next. My father decided to take us to some caves we never had been before. One of which was Dog Drop. It was likely named so because someone either threw their pet in there or a coyote fell in there and the body was later discovered.
That's nice.
Yeah, right? Dog Drop had a roughly 30-foot rappel straight down to enter. I went down with my brother while my father waited up at the top. There was a hole in the ground. I started to feel uneasy, though I didn't know why, so I followed my brother into the hole. I felt worse as I moved down. When I looked up, I saw the same corridor, the same turn, the same wall, the same bottles at the corner, and I instantly was hit with this overwhelming sense of nausea and fear and being watched, and everything was screaming at me to leave. I froze and must have made some noise because my brother turned around and asked what was wrong. I managed to say I wanted to leave now and climbed out as quickly as I could, followed immediately by my brother. We packed up and left. Never have gone back and never will. Haven't told anyone what actually happened. Just said I wasn't feeling well and they forgot pretty quickly. The thing that really makes it creepy for me is that I have never had the dream again. Year after year, I would have it consistently, but it just dropped after that. But I still remember it all, and I still feel afraid, almost an external fear when I think about it.
I don't like that.
I don't like that either.
It feels like almost fulfilling a prophecy, minus his family getting tortured.
Well, maybe about did, I don't know.
Maybe. His family was there.
So.
All right, well, that was creepy.
It was weird.
That does remind me of a couple of lucid dreams that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
All right. So my last story, posted 2 years ago by Parsi Fail. I worked as a correctional officer for a long time. I've worked at facilities in Texas and in Michigan. The oldest prison I've ever worked at just recently started to close in Michigan, and it got me thinking about all the paranormal experiences I've had there and in other prisons that I worked at. I'd like to share with you all of those and some of the more notable paranormal experiences that I've had while working in these prisons. My uncle is a prison guard in one of the prisons in New York. So it's an old prison.
Yeah.
First off, I'd like to say that I've never really believed in ghosts before I started working as a correctional officer. I started off working in Texas at an intake facility. I worked night shifts 12 hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. The first experience that I ever had... Oh, he also works the night shift, my uncle. That's the worst shift you could probably work at a prison, I think. Creepiest shift.
Mm-hmm.
The first experience that I ever had was working on a lower security housing unit. When finishing a round, I was chatting with my partner and I heard a loud banging sound. It was at like 3 a.m. this point.
The witching hour.
The witching hour. No prisoners should be out of their bunks. I asked my partner if they knew what the banging was. They, being an older officer, told me bluntly that the unit we were working was haunted. They told me the sound was coming from a door of one of the small, quiet cells in a hallway not directly visible from the officer station, and about how a prisoner had died in one. The prisoner allegedly died because the officers working there at the time had given him a sack of food when it was lunchtime for the prisoners, and the prisoner had choked on the food and died. I really didn't believe that it was haunted, so I decided to go look at the store. The volume increased as I got louder to the door. The door itself was visibly shaking, as if someone was pounding on it. There was nothing that could have been causing the door to shake the way that it was. I was at a loss for words. Later that night, I checked the door again, and there was a steamed-up handprint visible on the glass of the door's window. Yeah. Another experience I had was at the same facility, but at a different housing unit. It was around 1 to 2 a.m., and I was sitting inside the officer station watching the cameras and talking to my partner. I look at one of the cameras and clearly see a prisoner sitting at a table in the day room. I turn my head at the day room and no one is sitting at the table. I just saw it on camera. I asked my partner to go check it out because no one is supposed to be out of bed yet. I roll back the time on the camera to see if I could see where the prisoner might have gone. The prisoner was on the camera. That prisoner that was on the camera literally slowly fades away and vanishes completely. My partner comes back to the officer station and we both watch this video over and over. Later that night, during one of my rounds, I notice a wet floor sign that got left out. I return it to the porter closet. I get back to the officer station and look back to where the porter closet is to see the same wet floor sign left out.
What?
I asked my partner if they were playing a joke on me or something because I just put the sign away. Partner denies doing anything with it. I go back out and make sure I put the sign back in the closet and lock the door. Get back to the officer station. Wet floor sign still right there in the open again. My partner and I are both watching this wet floor sign now. It starts to tip over on one end very slowly, 2 of its legs off the ground. The sign then slams itself into the ground, then proceeds to slide quickly up the hallway and back in front of the closet door before ceasing all movement. My partner and I refused to come out of the officer station for the rest of the night because we were so scared. One more notable one from Texas. I was working in an ADSEG unit, really high security for prisoners that get in fights and cause a lot of problems repeatedly. We had a prisoner who was sitting in one of our close observation cells. These cells are usually used for people who threaten harming themselves.
Oh my god.
Sorry. In the summertime, prisoners will sometimes just say they are suicidal to be put in one of these cells because they are a lot cooler and are near AC vents that the normal housing units don't have. The prisoner told me that this was what they were doing and that they didn't want to cause any problems later. Later on that night, one of my partners and I were watching cameras, and all of a sudden we see a shadow moving across the floor. Eventually, come to the close observation cell and disappear under the door. This is where it gets a little crazy. I do a round and check on the closed observation cells. The prisoner is pacing in the cell. I ask the prisoner if they're okay, and the prisoner tells me that something doesn't feel right and that they're hearing voices that aren't there. I try to calm them down and eventually do and lay on the bed. Later, my partner calls for assistance because the prisoner had bit in the skin of their own wrist, causing them to bleed, held them above their head, and allegedly was speaking in tongues. And that's the end of that story, apparently.
Okay.
When I started working at prisons in Michigan, I worked at a prison that's now closing. It was built back in 1877 and is one of the oldest prisons still operating in all of the United States.
I'm listening.
I thought you were making that sound at me.
No. Leo was looking at me like...
There were so many small experiences that I've had there. Doors would slam, you'd hear voices, cold chills. The first really notable experience that I had was around Christmas time on the third shift.
Always a night shift.
Always Christmas. I was working the oldest unit on the facility. Usually we don't have prisoners there, but we had opened the unit to separate prisoners during the COVID pandemic. I didn't have a partner due to how short-staffed we were, so one of the officers set up a TV for me to keep me entertained because I'd be really far away from all the other units and get bored with no one to talk to. I do rounds for most of the night watching TV between them. Suddenly, I hear a banging noise from a door that leads to the hallway that takes you all the way up to an even older, unused, condemned part of the prison. I open the door and take a look down the hallway. A cold breeze hits me, and suddenly my arm hairs stand on end.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
I close the door, thoroughly creeped out, and go sit down and start watching TV. The TV starts flipping through channels rapidly and then stops on static. I had to get moved on to a different unit because I'm scared shitless.
The poltergeist.
Sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to say that. Not allowed to curse even though I'm 23. One day, on the third shift, my work friend and I were working positions that allowed us to have a lot of free time and no prisoners to watch. We decided to explore the prison. We explored the tunnels that went underneath the prison, the old barns, the old unstaffed gun towers. We eventually decided to go look at the old condemned part of the prison from my earlier experience. There was a big metal gate about halfway down the hallway that had to be opened by a big skeleton key. We get back to the old condemned part, and my friend tells me about how this part was supposed to be the old segregation. We had used flashlights to see because the section is so old and it's not powered. The energy back there I won't ever forget, just filled me with the feeling of dread. I asked my friend to head back, and we start to head back down to the hallway where the gate was. My friend's flashlight suddenly dies, and we make it to the hallway, barely able to see anything in the almost pitch blackness. We hear something running after us.
Oh,
so we start running up the hallway too. My friend fumbles with the key as we hear it getting closer. We get to the gate, open it, and sprint out of there. Later on, I noticed that my friend had red claw marks all over his arm.
Oh, hell no.
I don't like that. I don't like that.
I don't like when they make marks on you. Like, that's like...
I don't like
I feel
the
like
sound
it's a form of an
someone
attachment.
running behind me.
Oh, that too. Yes.
Mm-mm.
I don't like that.
That was a good one to end on.
That was a very good one. So this story was the beginning of a slew of paranormal happenings that took place in the apartment building and elsewhere. In the early 90s, a few of my friends and I lived in an old apartment building that had been built in the 50s or 60s. Long story short, one of my friends and I were using the Ouija board. You're dumb.
I would never.
You're dumb.
I would never.
Any of you that ever have, you're dumb. Be smart. Let's think about it. Hell no.
No.
We've been having more luck that night than the first few times we've tried it, with creepy sentences.
The first few times?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Ooh. We've been having more luck that night than the first few times we tried it, with creepy sentences being spelled out in a very smooth manner.
I don't have not only did I just not use a Ouija board for obvious reasons, but I just don't have the patience to, like, wait for them to spell everything out.
And just to not do it in general.
That too.
Like, come on, people. Let's get...
I don't feel like being more haunted than I already am.
Ugh. I don't need any bad energy coming my way, that's for damn sure. So where was I? We were talking to an entity that said it was in the same room with us. We were feeling super skeptical, so I asked it to give us a sign, which, you're dumb. Right after I said that, an extremely loud pig grunting sound came from the wall across from us. No. Keep in mind that it was just us two in the living room. One roommate was in the shower. The other was in the back bedroom. The friend was next to me. No one was in the vicinity of the wall the noise came from. We immediately signed off after that, horrified. Just horrified? I'd be like, let's go to a church. Holy water up in here. Later that night, I started to walk to our kitchen, and I heard the cabinets opening and closing by themselves. No one else was in or even close to the kitchen. To get to the kitchen, you had to walk down a hallway away from the bedrooms, through the living room, and make a right around a retaining wall into the kitchen. I was at the beginning of the hallway, about to walk into the living room, when I heard the cabinet noises. I, of course, did not go into the kitchen that night.
I probably still would.
I would still walk into a church. Holy water, baby.
You might need to get a priest in there.
You need a couple priests. Sage.
I want to know, are you still hearing piggy noises? That's the real question. It was Alyssa, actually. It was just Alyssa. Alright, so that's the end of our Reddit stories. I think we're gonna go ahead and record a separate video of our own personal ghost experiences and upload that on Friday. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll see you Friday. Bye.
Bye, y'all.